I'm back. So I am trying this new thing out where I'm using a voice recorder rather than kind of just talking during this stream. Well, long story short, I was painting and I had my speakers on, and I didn't realize my mic was catching the background music that I had. So yeah. Anyway, so around this part right here, I sort of just I'm creating uh, the shape of the deltoids, the backside. So the way I kind of envision this Magikarp is that he's kind of like muscular, but also has a little bit more fat in his body. Is like maybe around 15-20% fat, so he's not like super lean, so he wouldn't have a lot of striations. So I'm like kind of using the light to kind of give him a little bit of thick, like there's like that thick fat that you can't like really get rid of if you're if you're so big. So yeah, anyway, we'll continue on. Okay, so you see around that part, during the fast forward, I'm using the lasso tool to sort of create the shapes for me. Yeah, lasso tools are really useful when you're doing like big shapes, small shapes, but it's useful when you can create you can basically just um, separate sections, and then when you do that, you use like a big soft brush or like a hard brush to kind of make the shape for you. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It just really depends on what you're doing. um, and like you gotta also control the color. You can't just willy nilly go out and start making some crazy adjustments and all that shit. Um, right now, I'm just kind of again forming, shaping. There's a lot of things that I do during this where I'm like, okay, this kind of looks good, but then I change my mind because I'm like kind of thinking of anatomy too at the same time, and usually like that always makes me change the way I'm painting. Um, just like right now, I'm actually like in the original video or the audio, I'm talking about like, oh, so I should be looking at anatomy. So what I'm doing, since I'm like too lazy to look at the book, I'm just kind of like bunching my arm up, and then I'm looking at it and seeing how it would look. So that little section right there that I'm painting right now actually is a fact that pops up when you kind of close your like crease your elbow, or not elbow but your arm, your forearm to your bicep. If you pull it close together, it actually has that little kind of fat right there. So I'm making that. I'm also explaining that like the delt muscle right there that I have versus like the bicep is a little too big. So later on, I actually fix it. Not in this video though. I'm just kind of like creating more um, shadows, and I'm using like purple as the shadow because uh, I'm just I like how it turns out, how it looks with this skin tone. And I'm also kind of just messing around too. Like usually when I'm painting, I just kind of fiddle with the colors. I don't really have like a specific like, oh, I'm gonna use these colors and this is gonna be my skin tone color, and then I do the swatches. I don't really do that. I just kind of move the thing around. As long as you're in the gray, it's really just it works fine. It doesn't matter what color you're using as long as you're in the gray, and that gray is kind of like harmonious to your shadows. You're good. Right now, I'm setting up the lighting, basing it off of where I want what portion of Magikarp muscles Magikarp's muscles that I want to show up, and so I'm just kind of working on it. The thing is, too, you'll notice that I get really annoyed with the whisker that he has, because this is the thing too. When you're painting, you need to have a big view of the piece rather than like small sections, really. Because if you see the big view, you can pretty much just understand and know what you're doing with it, right? Like if you have something covering a certain section, is kind of like a trick. So most artists, like what I do usually, if I don't like a part of the drawing that I'm doing, then I'll cover it with like a hair or a clothing, or an arm or a hand, like that. And like the hand, I'm kind of putting in between his bicep and his pec. So stuff like that. Like I tend, like, you can do that, like it's cool design, but also at the same time it's kind of like an artist trick. Anyway, if you do that, then sometimes it gets in the way when you're painting, because now you're going to have to go around it. Right now I'm basically creating planes too. Sorry, I'm like all over the place. Anyway, I'm creating planes, so the light is technically hitting the top of the bicep, and so the bicep would curve down, right? So I'm making sure that there is a transition between the lights. See, I'm kind of showing you where the lighting is, and now I'm gonna start circling like where everything will be. So lighting is up top, hitting Magikarp's face, his chest, a little bit of his pecs, a little bit of the bicep and the forearm muscles. Um, the bottom part, I kind of show like, oh, there's gonna be shadow right there, and then the backlight is basically just a secondary lighting. The main lighting is the front, and that's what you want to worry about when you're kind of, oh, I'm basically trying to have a kind of like experiment. Oh, maybe I could use orange and blend it together, but it looked like ass, so I deleted everything. So yeah, I'm explaining again why there's a transition, why I lit the top and then the plane to the bottom, because it doesn't really do that. But if you have big muscles, you kind of have like your body shapes changes, because the muscle tends to kind of have, the muscle itself has a shape, and so it kind of grows out, and so the skin will kind of like, you know it naturally will fucking follow the shape of whatever's underneath. I'm just talking about, or I'm just showing the, like, if textures. I mean, I don't really use textures as much, just because it's a pain in the ass to uh, I just don't like the way it looks sometimes. Like, I like it on other people's paintings, but when it comes to mine, I don't really like it. I'll use like textures as like a way to kind of like show a little bit more um, in the light area. I don't really do that in the shadows. Like if I want to do like a little bit of stubble, or like a blemish on the face, that works. Or maybe on the body. I usually, like, my textures are like scars, and that's really it. Yeah, I started. This is the part where I was like, this stupid whisker is in my way. Um, I need to like remove this, and like I'm like, oh, you need to keep in mind that if you're doing painting, you want to be able to see the entire piece before you start. Like, you're adding a lot more stuff, so it's really kind of, it hinders your ability to be able to see the overall picture and see the painting as itself, as like a, like, to see the entire painting rather than like, oh, there's something blocking it you know I'm just literally just complaining about how this stupid whisker is on in my way, and I can't see how the shape is, and so I'm pretty sure this is when I decide to, yep, there it goes. I'm just like, screw it, I'm gonna delete this. I'll do this later. Um, Let me see, what else can I talk about? Yeah, I'm just kind of reiterating the whole like sketching versus painting. Why it's important to kind of use a minimal sketching. Like you don't have if you're painting like a realism or like a piece that you're gonna render like crazy, you shouldn't really worry about the sketch. You want to worry about the painting itself because the sketch will take you super long depending on how like meticulous you are. Um, Sketch will take you the longest to do, and you're gonna try and perfect it, and then out of nowhere, you just cover it. So it's really annoying, right? Like, you might as well just make a loose sketch and then paint, and then when you see something new, then you can add it on. And that's the beauty with digital painting. You can always add on, rather than like in traditional painting when you're like, well, I guess I finished the sketch, but I kind of want to draw a face like another thing on top of this really good painting. Now I'm fucked, you know. So, let me see. Oh, I'm just kind of rendering the upper part of the delt. Usually there's three. There's back. There's the I think it's anterior, medial, and then posterior delts, and I'm just kind of rendering that out. I get really overzealous with these muscles. Um, I kind of pull back later on. I'm like right now. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna look so cool. This is gonna be like the buffest Magikarp. I'm like so simping for muscles because for some reason I just really like the way it looks. um, I think I'm gonna start. Yeah, I'm gonna start trying to kind of flush out the face a little bit. You know what I did notice though? I did notice that I took away the splash portion of Magikarp, which I'm kind of sad because I really like that tattoo. See, look, if that whisker in the way, it's so stupid. You don't have to like paint around it. You might as well just delete it. I need to kind of keep that in mind every time I paint. Nah, I don't need to over render or like, not over render but over sketch. Well, I guess it could be like rendering sketches too. So just doing the shadows underneath the jawline, just creating it, making it more masculine, uh, giving him like a harder um, jaw. Usually when you're like at this point where your muscle is showing and you have like, you know, your body fat is fairly kind of low on the low end, your the fat on your skin starts to kind of disappear first. It depends on every person, but anyway, that's a whole new kind of different topic. So I'm just kind of creating and shaping his jawline on this side, on this part. This is where I'm like, oh, I think he needs gills, cause he's a human fish. I'm just, I'm just like, what am I talking about? I'm going back. You'll notice as I paint, I like to move around. Once I finish kind of like a certain area, then I'm like, okay, I gotta go back. So now I'm noticing like, oh, okay, this part right here needs a little bit more work. The anatomy's a little too exaggerated for like muscle structure wise. Like it's a little too big compared to the other side. So like it definitely needs to be pulled back. But I'm so like engrossed to like how the shape looks and the shadow and the core shadows and the ambient light and all that stuff. So just getting way too into it, and I'm just like, maybe I could just forget it. And sometimes um, that's like the biggest kind of mistake most artists makes too, is that will make is that they really like it, at first glance, but then when they come back, it's not good. But like at first glance, it looks really good, and you're trying to finish it, and then you just post it. It's always good to kind of like look away sometimes, and even by like you'll see me kind of switch back and forth the canvas, and that doesn't really help. No, that doesn't help me because I like to switch just because of positioning. Um, and right now I'm like looking at the delt, and I'm like, oh man, this looks really good. But yeah, anyway, well, it's gonna be fast forward for a little bit, so I'm gonna stop. Okay, so around here, I'm starting to kind of slow down and render again. I'm still just really fiddling with this arm. I know what internally what's wrong with it, and so I'm just kind of trying to fix it, but at the same time be like, you know, be okay with the shape of it. And so I'm like adding lighting, um, making sure that wherever the light is supposed to hit, I'm rendering. And I think that's when I'm kind of realizing that, oh, fuck it, you know. So I'm just talking about the same thing, going back, re-rendering, fixing, putting lighting, um, etc. So as you can see, I was basically just kind of trying to figure out how to do this hand. Usually hands are like really annoying, especially when, for me, right. This is not like anatomically correct because I'm only using like 3 fingers and maybe a thumb. Uh, just because I was like, he's a Pokemon. Does he really need fucking 5 fingers? So I kind of just, I was like, I made a decision, and this honestly takes me the longest to figure out. This stupid hand was the worst. And I don't even think I get it right at all. I think I just keep sort of fiddling with it over and over again, until like the very end. Like I'm just kind of mumbling and trying to figure out. Okay, maybe he's kind of putting his hit this finger up and then the others, but I'm still really struggling. It's because I didn't really sketch it too. I kind of just implied it, and that's also bad. Even though I was like, "Don't worry about your sketch." Yeah, sometimes you kind of need to. Uh, it's drawing's all about fucking just figuring it out along the way. said that looks like ass. Jesus. Yeah, and it still looks like ass. That's horrible. I'm just like, screw it. I'm just gonna freaking change this right now. Well, you can't really hear that now because I'm doing a voiceover, so I'll just leave that. There we go. Just realized he's got baby hands. Fuck. I slowed down to kind of talk about muscles again. Yeah, so this is like nearing the end of the video. By around this time, I'm kind of just talking about how I'm figuring out everything, but it's really just um, knowledge of like shapes and anatomy, and then kind of using your problem solving like mind to kind of figure out, okay, this goes there, this goes there, what else do I need? And I'm like just nitpicking certain spots, and then I'm also kind of like, if you can see like a lot of the shadows I pulled back on just because it was a little too dark in some areas, but I actually go back and rework that spot and kind of hide it because I wasn't gonna do a really like big lighting at the back anyway, so I was gonna like erase that. But right now I'm kind of working on the fingers again. I was kind of like, oh, this is kind of bothering me, so I'm making it look a little bit more muscular and like thicker. Just kind of, it's kind of like Machoke and Machamp. I think it's Machamp that had, or Machoke too, had like 3 fingers. It's kind of like that. I'm just talking about my experience and like I took, excuse me, I took a class, and how it helped me kind of understand, oh, art is basically just problem solving. There's really no big like secret other than it's problem solving, and if you don't know how to solve for the problem, then you're gonna struggle. So knowledge is key when it comes to art. Unless like it's cool too if you don't want to like, if you're fine with it, right? And you don't want to go and take classes or whatever. So you can always just like go online. I mean, YouTube has a shit ton of better, way better, freaking artists than me that teaches. Marco Bucci is a great teacher. He is actually one of my favorite um, YouTubers that like teaches art because he's so articulate about his words, his points. Is very direct. He knows what he's talking about. He rarely um, just repeats himself, and when he does, it's to reiterate like why he is repeating it and why it's important. Anyway, I'm gonna fast forward around this area. So that's pretty much it. Really, um, the shape language is ideal when you're kind of painting skin. Well, when you're painting anatomy or like objects, shape language is a key. Which side of the plane hits the light and which side doesn't gets shadows, and then the darkest side basically you can just fade away. It doesn't matter. This is realism, by the way. This isn't like in anime style or graphic style or anything like that. This is more of like how the world is. How, like, if you look at your body and you're like against the light, you can see that some spots actually fade away, or not fade, but like you can't really tell. Like the details kind of get blurred when they're in shadow. So lighting is where it's important. Uh, those muscles are ridiculous, but I fix it later on. I promise. Anyway, thank you for listening me blab about random shit. I will make a better one next time, and maybe like without my freaking background music on, and like I'm actually using my headphones. Um, I'll see you next time. Bye.